Our territorial waters are constantly being encroached by Chinese vessels, but the Philippine Coast Guard continuously conducts resupply and patrol missions to make sure such ships are driven away. For our PCG personnel, it is very important to maintain presence in the area and defend the nation's rights and sovereignty, or risk encouraging foreigners to claim it for themselves. There, Bernardo tells us more.
The blowing of this horn marked the beginning of the journey of BRP Malabrigo of the Philippine Coast Guard. From Puerto Princesa Pier in Palawan, it traveled to the West Philippine Sea to conduct maritime patrol. After 32 hours or a day and a half, we arrived at Sabina Shoal. Here we spotted some foreign vessels. BRP Malapascua also welcomed us, which had just completed a mission to support the supply boat of the Philippine Navy that delivered supply to the personnel of BRP Sierra Madre, one of the main defenses of the Philippines in the region. According to Coast Guard Captain Rodel Hernandez, the commanding officer of BRP Malapascua, it's like they're playing patintero with the Chinese Coast Guard when delivering supply to BRP Sierra Madre. Every time the Philippine Coast Guard approaches Ayungin Shoal, China is being aggressive.
So, up to 12 nautical miles, pinapayagan naman tayong pumasok. Pero habang lumalapit tayo doon sa Ayungin Shoal, medyo nag-change yung atmosphere. Nagiging nagiging aggressive, nandiyan na magcha-challenge sila.
The maritime patrol continued, and so were the activities of China vessels.
To unidentified foreign vessel with MMSI number 260401-402 at Iroquois Reef. This is Philippine Coast Guard, BRP Malapascua, MRRD 4403. You are anchored within the Philippine Exclusive Economic Zone. You are requested to provide the following: name of vessel, your intention, last and next port of call at Channel 16, over.
And when it didn't respond, the Philippine Coast Guard lowered their rigid hull inflatable boats or RIB to show away the ships. This is how the Philippines acts towards China ships until we arrive close to Pagasa Island.
China Navy Warship 549. This is Philippine Coast Guard, BRP Malapascua, MRRV 4403. Conducting lawful routine maritime patrol within the Philippine Territorial Sea. You are not authorized to conduct maritime patrol within the Territorial Sea. Stay clear from our passage in accordance with the collision regulation and leave the area immediately, over.
When we arrived at Pagasa Island, BRP Malapascua delivered some supplies and construction materials. The ship also dropped anchor for a night. The following day, while sailing to the Julian Felipe Reef, we met a group of fishermen. The captain of BRP Malapascua invited them on the ship and talked. Sofrinio said they came from Batangas and had been fishing in the West Philippine Sea for almost 3 weeks.
Okay naman po, wala po namang nanghahara sa amin. Bakit daw pumasok dito? Alam na mainit ang issue ng China at ng Wan. Sabi ko, bakit hindi naman kami kasali, sir? Nangingisda lang naman kami.
Before the fishermen left, the Philippine Coast Guard provided some food for them, which they gladly accepted. A few hours passed, we arrived at the Julian Felipe Reef. As expected, the China vessels were anchored there. It was estimated that there were more than 100 Chinese maritime militia. Aside from regional challenges, the PCG used a RIB to order the ships to leave. Before officially ending the mission, the Philippine Coast Guard returned to Ayungin Shoal. A China Coast Guard shadowed the BRP Malapascua. Philippine and China ships exchanged regional challenges.
4403, Philippine Coast Guard Vessel 4403. This is China Coast Guard Vessel 5201. Your behaviors have severely gone against the consensus reached between China and the Philippines, have infringed on China's sovereignty, security, and maritime rights and interests, have violated the laws and the regulations of the People's Republic of China. We want you, all your course, and leave immediately.
China Coast Guard 5201. This is Philippine Coast Guard vessel, BRP Malapascua, 4403, conducting lawful routine maritime patrol within the Philippine Exclusive Economic Zone in accordance with international and Philippine national laws. We are proceeding according to our planned route. You are reminded that China is a party of the United Nations Convention of the Law of the Sea, that the Ayungin Shoals falls within the Philippine Exclusive Economic Zone. You are advised to leave the area immediately. Over.
The Philippine ship was not intimidated and lowered their reef to do a maritime survey in the area. But China also released their small boat and followed our boat. But BRP Malapascua still continued in its mission and tried to enter the Ayungin Shoal. This is where China became aggressive.
Bigla silang nagkandak ng ng dangerous maneuver, no? Binalak niya yung ating plan route, no? Kaya tayo nag-stop ng engine, no? Kasi kung hindi, pwedeng magkaroon ng collision.
This incident was called a disrespect of our sovereign rights in the South China Sea.
It is quite surprising that they are still disregarding the collision regulation in which they are also a signatory state. It just goes to show that the Chinese have always been ignoring the international law.
The Philippine Coast Guard succeeded in the mission, especially that the Philippine ships were able to approach a closer distance to BRP Sierra Madre despite the blockage of China vessels. Bea Bernardo for The Nation.